This is an old home audio system from about 50 years ago. It's a family heirloom, and I just finished converting it into a guitar speaker cabinet. It's made me think deeply about the gear I use and how it affects my identity as a musician, and about all the times that I've chased tone and what I really found. In this video, I'm going to talk about those topics and how they tie back to this piece of mid-century furniture. I'm lucky to have had relationships with all four of my grandparents. They all lived long, full lives. My mom's parents are still living, going strong, but both of my dad's parents passed in the last few years. My paternal grandmother died in 2020 in the middle of everything that was happening then, and shortly thereafter, my grandfather moved into assisted living. In order to pay the bills, Granddad decided to sell the house that he and Grandma had been living in since the early 60s. So my parents went back to my dad's hometown to help get the house ready for sale, and in doing so, they found a bunch of amazing things: photographs, old mementos, and some really cool furniture. Some of it is here with me in this ridiculous shed. For example, that shelving unit used to hold books and vinyl records. This is one of two side tables that used to hold my dad's stereo system when he was a teenager. And then there's this thing. It's an old home audio system made by Webcor Model 1059. They called it the Ravinia. The user manual called it a stereophonic phonograph. It's a wooden cabinet, and it used to have a turntable hidden in the top, speakers in the front panel, and an amplifier system inside. Granddad bought this in the early 60s when my dad was a toddler, and it sat in my grandparents' house for almost 60 years before my parents brought it to me. Naturally, the first thing that I did is I tested it. I plugged my own modern, known-to-be-working turntable into the auxiliary in, put on CCR's Chronicles, and got about 15 seconds of Proud Mary before the thing started to smoke, and I turned it off. I wasn't ever able to diagnose the problem, and I couldn't find a tech in the Atlanta area where I live that worked on this kind of thing. So since then, it's been unused, just taking up space here in the shed. My grandfather died earlier this year. I went back to Dad's hometown for the funeral, and it felt strange, like almost wrong to be there without Grandma and Granddad still around, without staying with them in that old house. So I returned home even more grateful to have pieces like this one, even if I didn't at the time know how to use it. Fast forward a few months and I'm in Athens, Georgia, at a guitar shop called Classic City Vintage Guitars, a really awesome shop. I'm playing through all these really cool old instruments and amps and through one truly unique guitar speaker cab. It had been a home audio system like this one. I guess when it stopped working, somebody removed all the guts and put a guitar speaker in it and began using it as a cab. It sounded great and it looked great. Of course, instantly reminded me of what was languishing in my shed. It planted a seed in my brain, and a few weeks later I got to work. I pulled out the turntable and the amplification system. I replaced the big central speaker with a guitar speaker, and then I wired that speaker and the remaining 4 speakers into 2 sort of independent speaker configurations, each with an 8 ohm rating, which is perfect for guitar. Now it's more than a piece of furniture. Now it does this. Now, there are probably 12 people who sat through that entire story, and 1, maybe 2 of them are thinking, it's just a 1x12 guitar cab. That's enormous. It's huge and heavy, let me assure you, and totally inefficient. You couldn't possibly bring it to a gig. And it's not shaped or designed like a proper guitar cab. I mean, if you needed a cab, couldn't you just go buy a real guitar cab? Okay, I'm sure no one is saying that. But someone may be wondering if it's a good guitar cab and thinking about the factors that make something a good guitar cab. I know this because I have shopped for guitar cabs. I've read the forums, I've watched the videos, I've talked to other players. I've done my homework and it suggested 3 things. First, that some guitar cabs are better than others, that using better gear will make me sound better, and that sounding better will make my music better. Those suggestions will sound familiar to all of you because they are the bread and butter of gear marketing. And not just in like Instagram stories posted by gear companies. They are in every gear demo on YouTube. And then they're repeated in comments to those videos and in forum posts. Sometimes these messages are implicit, but they're still there, and they are persistent, and they are convincing. Seductive even, they're like a siren song that calls to so many musicians, including this one. But it's funny, when I step away from my computer and actually start making music, that siren song sounds fainter and fainter. I still want to sound good and, make good sounds, but I stop fantasizing or imagining or idealizing sounds. I'm trying to make something, so I have to focus on what's real in the real world, sounds that I actually can and am achieving. And chances are, when I reach for a guitar or an effect or a microphone, I end up reaching for something that is, in addition to being like right next to me, something that I've used before, that is familiar and has proven reliable. And I don't think that's unique. I mean, think about some of your favorite musicians. Some of them are probably associated with specific gear. But do you know the story of how they found that gear? When I was learning to play, I assumed that somebody picked a guitar or an amp because they were great, and they went looking for something that was great, the best, they went looking for the best. But when I've really looked into it, in most cases, that's not really true. It's more like a weird hindsight bias that we impose because we know that with that gear, they made great shit. I mean, for example, if you had a picture of Jimmy Page on your wall or in your dorm room, he probably was standing in front of a stack of Marshall amps. And you might assume, as I did, that he played those amps because they were the best available at the time. But that's simply not true. In fact, he started using Marshall amps because he was planning to go on a tour, and he was worried that his preferred amps, which were made by Vox and Hiwatt, just wouldn't make it through the tour and would be virtually impossible to repair. He needed something that he was confident would survive touring in the United States, and so he chose Marshalls. I mean, think about that. Some people dream of Marshalls because of him. They idealize the tones that he made with those amps, but in fact, he chose those amps in the first place because he expected them to be reliable, because he could find parts in a pinch, because they worked. And look, they also sounded great, but is that really why they're in a special tier or echelon of amp history? Because they sounded the best? Or is it because players like Jimmy Page decided to use them and then became familiar and comfortable with them and used them again and again? I think it's probably both, right? But nobody talks about the accidents, the practical realities, the circumstantial drudgery that turns good gear into great gear. And maybe that's for a good reason. I mean, for one thing, it's kind of boring. It also waters down the mythology of a particular era and of the artists that were big in that era and of the gear that those artists used. Gear that's still being made or copied or referenced today, often by the same brands. Brands that literally bank on the continued popularity of classic artists that used that gear. But what if you tried, just for a moment, to ignore mythology and novelty and rarity and hype? What if you instead focused on some of the things that these greats, these legends were focusing on when they chose this gear, like accessibility and reliability and familiarity? I mean, let's play this out. What if the best overdrive pedal is an overdrive pedal that is at your nearest local guitar store and within your budget, or like, God forbid, one that's already over on your shelf? And what if tone is in the fingers, insofar as every time you have something to say musically, those fingers reach for the same 2 or 3 pieces of gear that have worked for you in the past, that have come through and helped you manifest your ideas into reality? Accessible, familiar, reliable. If I'd had this kind of perspective when I was a young guitar player, the last 20 years would have been totally different. I mean, maybe in some alternate universe, I just use this rig forever. But in this universe, I'm taken by the idea that accessible gear that becomes familiar can become grafted to your identity in such a strong way that it is undeniably great for you. I'm looking around me in this shed at things that are within arm's reach and wondering, what do I want to make familiar? What do I want to define me? And that line of thinking, those questions instantly lead me back to this. I returned home from Granddad's funeral with clarity about a lot of things, including that I wanted to keep this piece forever. I was ready to make it a part of my identity. I just didn't know how, and now I do. I love electric guitar. As long as my hands work, I will play, and this piece of my family history can be a part of that. I've decided to choose this as my guitar cab, to make it familiar, to embrace it, to use it all the time, whether I'm just in here jamming or recording. Now that means sacrificing a few things like portability, but also presents me with a few unique opportunities. First off, as we noted before, this is not shaped like an ordinary guitar cabinet, and the shape of a cab affects the sound that it produces. This thing is both wide and deep. It's got little openings everywhere and even funny little compartments that have holes going into the main resonant chamber. No one makes guitar speaker cabs with those features. You cannot buy one like this. And maybe you wouldn't want to, but it's what I've got. I love it. I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to use it. And it will make my guitar sound different than yours, for better and for worse. And number two, by design, this thing holds 5 different speakers. One of them was 12 inches in diameter and easily replaced by a typical guitar speaker, but the others are 6 inches in diameter and 3¼ inches, not normal at all for guitar speakers. I've wired those 4 tiny speakers together in series parallel, just like in an old Marshall 412. And the combination of those speakers gives me a unique sound to use as an alternative to the more normal, though not totally normal, sound that I can get from this cab. Okay, I'm in here editing the video, as you can see, and after listening to these sounds a bunch of times on playback, those mini speakers sound incredible. They are producing such a shapely guitar tone that this is way beyond novelty. I mean, this is actually really, really usable. A great sound that I didn't seek out thinking it would be great, just knowing that it was available, accessible. You get what I'm saying? And then as I gazed into the cavernous interior, I had an idea. I'm going to mount an omnidirectional PZM microphone inside of this cab and use it to pick up the sound that's produced inside this totally unique space. It's another option that I'm excited to explore and use in future recordings. Now, I am genuinely excited about all of those features, but it's funny to talk about them like that. The point isn't to get all of these interesting sounds. The point is to use my grandparents' cabinet, to tie it and them tighter into my life through the music that we make together. But it's not enough just to build the thing. To really strengthen that connection, I have to use this, and I already have. I use it to track all of the lead guitar parts for my most recent song project. And it worked and sounded exactly the way I hoped, and when you add that on top of the personal attachment that I already have to this, I can tell that I'm developing the kind of feedback loop that will make this the familiar go-to piece of gear that I want it to be. I want it to have that kind of place in my life, and if I continue to love the sounds, that's just a bonus. And I guess you get to be the judge of how it sounds, both from the clips you've heard in this video and from the lead guitar you're about to hear in the song that's going to play at the end of this video. It's called I Don't Care About You, which is a bit of a strange title given the subject matter of this video, but it's a song that I loved making and I'm really, really proud of. So let me know what you think in the comments. The song should be on all streaming platforms on August 9th. And until then, or the next time I see you, thank you so much for your time. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you around.
You say your love is bigger than the night like commitment. I'm cool with no rules. You do what you need to. I'm cool with no rules. I don't care about you making a new friend, breaking a new band. As long as you kiss me more than him, I don't care about you. I don't wonder what you do, when, where, and with who. I'm cool, I'm cool. I don't care about you. And I don't spend a second guessing what I said in my text. And if I check to see whether you read it, it's just a reflex. 'Cause I'm cool with no rules.